Hello, it's me, Christine. Welcome to my little crime corner. One of my dreams is to attend a murder mystery function, but I've never been because I have no friends. Anyway, enough about me. Our story takes place on February 14th, Valentine's Day, in 1998 in Maryland, specifically on the waterfront community of St. Michael's. Steve and Kim Hricko, who came from nearby Laurel, Maryland, for the Valentine's Day weekend. Steve worked as a golf course superintendent at Patuxent Greens Country Club, and Kim was a surgical technician at Holy Cross Hospital in Silver Spring. Steve and Kim had been married for 9 years, and they had an 8-year-old daughter named Anna. One of the draws for the evening was a murder mystery dinner. So fun. The show that evening was titled The Bride Who Cried. It was about a groom being poisoned by a glass of champagne at the wedding reception. What a story. The Hrickos actually ended up sitting next to a prosecutor named Henry and his date Caroline, who was actually a probation officer. Kim was very into the murder mystery, and she was talking to all the actors and all the people at the table, talking about who the murderer might be. Kim and Steve had a great time that night with each other, as well as with all of the other people at their table. And after dinner, Steve decided to go back to their hotel room. And Kim said she would be there soon, but she had to leave to run a quick errand. She finished her errand and returned to their hotel room at about 1:20 in the morning, only to see what looked like flames coming from their room. She walked into the hotel's lobby with no sense of urgency, and she calmly said, "I need to speak with someone who works here." The on-duty night manager that night, named Elaine, said, "That's me, how can I help you?" And Kim very calmly said, "I think my room is on fire." And for whatever reason, Kim refused to give Elaine her room number, but Elaine, startled by the possibility of a fire, frantically went through her records and found that the Hrickos were staying in suite 506. As more people started gathering, Kim changed her tune and started panicking because Steve was still in the room and called police. Police and firefighters arrived shortly, and unfortunately, Steve did not survive. When Kim had approached one of the officers who had first arrived on the scene, she was holding a cell phone in her left hand, and she kept saying, "I went to see the body," although she hadn't yet been told that Steve was dead. Firefighters found Steve on the floor of the room, still in his pajamas. Since he was still in his pajamas, firefighters suspected that he may not have known about the fire and had passed away while he was asleep. His cause of death was due to severe burns sustained from the fire. This was extremely shocking to Steve's family, as well as the other people who had sat with him and Kim at their table at dinner that night. Kim had told investigators that Steve had gotten sloppy drunk at dinner that night. She also said that he had taken a Xanax as well as drank a Theraflu that evening around 7 p.m., which was right before they had gone to dinner. The police were surprised that she showed such little emotion and that she was able to offer such a detailed account of their night and provided details that they didn't ask for, such as they watched the movie Tommy Boy at 11. Like, okay, thanks, that's great. Steve was very much loved by his daughter Anna as well as his sisters, who had questions about the accident and wanted answers. Upon searching the room, police found several empty beer bottles and cigars scattered around the room. They predicted that Steve was drinking and smoking a cigar while reading his magazine. He then ended up falling asleep. resulting in the cigar falling and starting the fatal fire. It apparently isn't all that uncommon that a fire started from a smoker falling asleep with a cigarette or a cigar that they either drop or it falls, and this is something that investigators call a routine smoking accident. But the fact that this happened in a hotel room where the linens are usually treated with some type of fire retardant to avoid this exact problem does raise some questions for me. Also, as far as Steve's friends and family were aware, Steve was not a smoker. His colleagues remember an instance where they were in a business meeting and some of the people there were smoking, and they asked if he wanted to smoke too, and he refused. He said, "I don't even know why people smoke those things." When arson investigators were trying to determine the starting point of the fire, they noticed a partially melted Pepsi bottle that Steve had left on the nightstand. Because of the direction the fire goes, and usually the amount burned, they are usually able to tell how and when a fire starts. They did, however, find some troubling things in the room. The fire marshal who was assigned to investigate the case was a man named Michael Mulligan. I went to high school with somebody named Michael Mulligan, and he changed the school's Wikipedia page under the notable alumni section, and he said that he was an astronaut. And it was up like that for 7 or 8 years before I think somebody finally edited it. Anyway, I don't think it's the same guy. Yeah, so back to this Michael Mulligan. He had noticed that the physical damage to the actual hotel room was quite minimal. And that's because the room was so well insulated that the fire wasn't able to spread due to lack of oxygen. Like I just said, hotel rooms and usually everything in them are treated with some type of fire retardant to avoid situations just like this one, where something like a cigarette is left unattended. And most hotels are non-smoking nowadays anyway. Or they should be at least, so these isolated fires are not a regular occurrence. Michael found that only one cigar from a new pack was missing, indicating that Steve had only smoked one cigar before presumably falling asleep and dropping the cigar, since it looked like the origin point of the fire was on the floor, just below the bed where Steve was initially sleeping. Michael had determined that the fire was not electrically caused, and it wasn't due to the heating or AC units, but could a small lit cigar really cause that much damage so quickly? To find out, the fire marshals had gotten the same cigars and the same pillow that Steve had had in his room at the time of the fire to see if lit cigars could have really been the culprit. They lit 2 cigars, placed them on the pillow, and waited. They ended up doing this several times, and they were never able to get the pillow to fully engulf in flames, let alone start the smallest of fires. Investigators were also unable to find any evidence of the cigar's butt, as well as any ashes. The medical examiner assigned to this case, named Dr. David Fowler, that had performed the autopsy on Steve, had found that Steve's blood test had indicated that he had what appeared to be a normal amount of carbon monoxide in his body, which was peculiar, since breathing in the smoke would have presumably been a contributing factor in his cause of death. Upon further examination of Steve's airways, Dr. Fowler found no soot in Steve's airways and absolutely no indication of smoke inhalation. This tells us that Steve was not breathing at the time of the fire. Kim had told police that Steve was drinking a lot at dinner, so the beer bottles found around the room were on top of what he had allegedly already drank that evening. But Dr. Fowler found no evidence of any alcohol in his system. So we have pretty much established that the fire was not the cause of Steve's death, and he was most likely deceased for some time before the fire started. Police brought in accelerant-sniffing dogs who picked up a scent of a flammable liquid on the hotel room's floor, right where Steve was found at the foot of the bed. Chemical tests done on the accelerant-covered items in the hotel found by the dogs, unfortunately, were unable to be identified, which would later make it inadmissible in court. Michael Mulligan ultimately determined that the fire was arson. As police were investigating further, they found out that Steve had a $400,000 life insurance policy, as well as a recently purchased $250,000 life insurance policy, both of which listed Kim as the beneficiary, which, as the spouse, one would expect. However, it was later discovered that Kim was having an affair with someone 10 years younger. Did you see this coming? Kim did admit to having the affair because love letters between her and her mystery man were found by the police. She said that she and Steve were actually trying to work on their marriage, and the Valentine's Day trip to the resort was intended to help with that. Things seemed to have been going fine until after dinner they got into an argument and Kim stormed off. Remember when she said she was going to do an errand? Yeah, okay. It was then discovered that Kim was intending to end their 9-year marriage, and she had no real intention of working on her marriage over the Valentine's Day weekend. Kim had declared that she and Steve were incompatible, with her being extroverted and Steve being introverted. She was not happy and had apparently spoken to friends and family about this on numerous occasions. Steve was doing his best to fix the marriage because he really wanted to keep his family together. He started making the changes that Kim was demanding, but unfortunately, it wasn't enough. Kim actually had the audacity to ask one of her coworkers to kill Steve. The coworker later said that he thought she was joking. He laughed and said, "Oh, you should just put him to sleep with some succinylcholine. Then he'll sleep forever." Succinylcholine is a muscle relaxant that is used when putting a tube down a patient's throat, but it is fatal in large doses. And Kim, being a medical technician, would have had access to succinylcholine and knew that if used, it would be untraceable, since it is broken down by human enzymes almost instantly. It isn't accounted for like a narcotic would be accounted for, so she could just easily swipe it then and there. Steve's autopsy found no traces of succinylcholine, but you wouldn't expect it to. There is no way to test if succinylcholine is in human tissue, despite many efforts to identify it. So, where do we go from here? We know that Steve was not a smoker, but was allegedly smoking a cigar that in turn caused the fire that was said to have killed him. Police were on the hunt to find out where the cigars were purchased and found the brand at one store. The clerk at the convenience store actually identified Kim as the person who came in, purchased the beer, cigars, and magazine that day, not Steve. The clerk even identified the exact cigars that Kim bought. She remembered because apparently it's unusual for women to buy cigars. How did the clerk remember her? And how could she be sure it was Kim? Well, she said she definitely remembered Kim because she had complimented Kim on her red hair, and she said, "It's so pretty, where do you get it colored?" And Kim got mad and said, "Ugh, this is my natural color." And she left. Okay then. Kim was arrested and charged with arson and first-degree murder, to which she pleaded not guilty. It was tough to prove their case in court because there was no evidence of Steve being injected with succinylcholine, and they were unable to determine the fire accelerant that the dogs had picked up in the room. Prosecutors used conclusion by exclusion, which meant they had to rule out all other possibilities for how the fire started in order to convince the jury that Steve was, in fact, murdered. Dr. Fowler said that Steve was not under the influence and he was dead before the fire started, which he says he believes Steve was poisoned with succinylcholine or another untraceable agent, which Kim most likely would have had access to due to the nature of her job. Because of the additional $250,000 life insurance policy on top of the already huge $400,000 life insurance policy, prosecutors believe that Kim was planning Steve's murder for months. Several of her friends even testified against her because she told them in detail exactly how she intended to kill Steve. We did find out through testimony that in late 1997, Kim's friend and coworker named Jennifer had announced her engagement and had asked Kim to be her maid of honor. Kim was excited and threw Jennifer a bridal shower at her house the week of Thanksgiving. It was there she met Jennifer's cousin, Brad Winkler, who was the only other man besides Steve at the bridal shower. Brad was a 23-year-old sergeant in the Marines, and even though he was 10 years younger than Kim, they apparently really hit it off and spent the entire night talking to each other. Steve noticed that there was obvious flirtation going on between Kim and Brad, and he was visibly upset. Kim told Steve he had nothing to worry about, and she was just consoling him because he was going through a bitter divorce. But just a few days later, Jennifer and her new husband left for their honeymoon and left their child with Brad, and over the course of 2 weeks, engaged in a full-fledged affair with Kim. When Jennifer and her husband returned home from their honeymoon, Kim revealed that she was having an affair with Brad and said she was in love with him. She told her friend that Brad was more affectionate than Steve and paid more attention to her. She also said that Steve never took her out on dates anymore and that he never helped out around the house when she had to take care of their daughter and work full-time. 2 weeks later, Kim told Steve that she wanted a divorce. This obviously devastated Steve, and he said he would do whatever it takes for her to change her mind. He did his best to show more affection and went to marriage counseling. He did his best to make the marriage work for the sake of their daughter and because he truly loved Kim. On New Year's Eve, 1998, Kim had met with her friend Teresa at a diner to complain once again about Steve. Apparently, now he was giving her too much affection and she couldn't deal with it anymore. She told Teresa that she felt like she couldn't breathe in the relationship and that she felt like divorce was no longer an option. Kim was afraid that if Steve found out about her ongoing affair with Brad, that he would kill himself, meaning she wouldn't be able to access the $400,000 life insurance policy on Steve, or that he would seek full custody of their daughter Anna and turn her against Kim. Kim was unwilling to risk either of these scenarios. Kim then went to her coworker, Kim Burgess, who she asked if he would know anyone who would kill her husband. She wasn't asking people willy-nilly though, no. She thought that Ken would know someone because he is an ex-con. That doesn't make someone a bad person. Anyway, Ken initially thought that she was joking, but knew Kim was serious when she offered him $50,000 to do it himself. For obvious reasons, Ken had no interest in taking part in the crime. Frustrated, Kim told Ken to forget the conversation and to not tell anybody. Ken then said, "You work in the operating room. You should just put him to sleep." It was then that Kim decided to use the succinylcholine that she had access to. Remember, she did work in the operating room after all. She also called Jennifer and her friend from college, Rachel, and told them about the plot. She's just telling everybody but Steve at this point. She said she would paralyze Steve with succinylcholine and then plant cigars around him to stage the scene to throw investigators off the trail. Yeah, how'd that work out for you, Kim? She had planned to set the fire to cover up the puncture marks from the succinylcholine, and since it was meant to put him to sleep, the autopsy would show that he had died from smoke inhalation. She expected that the death would be ruled an accident, and she would be able to cash out the life insurance policy move away with Anna, and start her new life with Brad. Her friends at this point were like, wow, no, under no circumstances should you do what you just told us. Kim, a divorce is the right thing to do. And that she can't do this because she had her daughter Anna. Anna needed her father. Kim, just get a divorce. But it seemed like Kim's mind was already made up, and there was nothing they could do or say that would change her mind. It's so disturbing at this point that several people know Kim's intention to kill Steve, but as far as I was able to find, nobody contacted police or intervened in any way. Unbeknownst to Steve, he went on planning their Valentine's Day trip and was very hopeful at this point. They were going to counseling, and from Steve's point of view, things seemed to be going very well. He thought this trip was going to continue to bring them closer together and that they would fall in love again. And right before leaving on their trip, Steve wrote in his journal, "Life at home is improving, and I am looking forward to Valentine's Day weekend at Harbortown with Kim. She called twice today and said I love you without me saying it first. I was very happy. Kim and I have not made love yet, but I want to. But I will wait as long as it takes. I love her. I believe I know what being in love really is. We have been married 9 years, but I feel like we just started dating." This is so heartbreaking because he was trying so hard and really making an effort and really thought things were going well with Kim and that she was rethinking the divorce. Meanwhile, Kim dropped off a present to Brad with a note that said, "Brad, I really wanted to give you these gifts in person, but I guess the Pentagon had a different idea. I'm so proud of what you do, so I'll just go on missing you. Have a nice weekend at home, baby. I look forward to seeing you soon. Happy Valentine's Day, sir. I love you so very much. Hugs and kisses, Kim." Unbelievable, Kim. She clearly had no interest in working things out with Steve and continued to give him false hope by not articulating how she felt. Murder is never the answer. Prosecutors believe that she purchased the cigars that day and waited for Steve to fall asleep. She administered the lethal dose of succinylcholine that she stole from work, staged the scene with the beer bottles and the cigars to make it look like an accident, doused some sort of accelerant, and started the fire. Because there was no sign of smoke inhalation in Steve's lungs, this was proof that Steve was dead before the fire started. Kim's defense team argued that Steve's lack of consciousness could have been caused by all the chemicals he inhaled through his work at the golf course. Okay. The prosecution, however, said that there was no alcohol in his system or any traces of foreign chemicals that would have caused him to lose consciousness. The fact that a single cigar could in no way engulf a pillow into flames meant that the fire had to be started deliberately through the assistance of an accelerant. Kim tried to establish her alibi by leaving the resort to do her errand, returning much later into the night and informing the hotel staff about the fire at 1:20 in the morning. Her motive was most likely motivated by money and wanting to start a new life with her lover, Brad, which would never happen because the jury found her guilty of first-degree murder and arson, and she was sentenced to life in prison. After the case, a lab in Sweden called the Carolina Institute, as well as a lab in the United States, have developed a way to test for and to see if traces of succinylcholine are in the body, even in embalmed tissue, which is amazing. Hopefully, because of this, they are able to catch any misuse of succinylcholine in the future. Kim is still in prison, where she belongs, and is regularly visited by her daughter Anna and her new granddaughter, who Steve unfortunately will never get to meet. The moral of the story is, murder is never the answer. If a coworker approaches you and asks if you or someone you know are interested in participating in a murder, call police. If you are offered money to be an accessory, call police. If they say, forget the conversation, do not forget the conversation, call police. If you see something, say something. If you hear something, say something. If you are approached with something. Anyway, that is all I have for you today. Thank you very much for watching. I hope you learned something, and I will see you in the next one. Bye.